All right, let's get going. So welcome everyone to the special business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, March 16th. At Squamish, please look Lats Squamish, Oyameo. We're meeting tonight on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. And you know, when the days get longer, it gets harder to have these evening meetings because I know the sun is still shining. You could be outside doing things, but we're in here doing important things. So let's go. Motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor French. Any opposed? Carries. We always have to pass ministerial order M192. We'll know the pandemic's over when we don't have to do this anymore. So we are ensuring that the meeting has openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability by the following means. This meeting is being live streamed. A video of this meeting will be available on our website for viewing on an on-demand basis. The meeting is open to the public for electronic participation via WebEx. Someone like to move that motion? Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are meeting electronically, so just a reminder to council, if you disconnect or reconnect, please let me know so this can be recorded in the meeting minutes. Raise your hand if you wish to speak, or say chair if you're connected by audio only. Please keep your telephone or computer on mute. We do expect everyone to be involved in the meeting. With respect to a vote, council members only have to state a nay vote. No statement is required if you are in favor. If you're having technical difficulties, please text our corporate officer. If the difficulties on our side, we'll recess for up to 10 minutes to figure it out and get everyone reconnected again. So with that, we don't have any items under, any notice of motion. I should check that first. Seeing none, we don't have anything this evening under items 5 or 6, 7, or 8. So we're on to number 9, bylaws, first reading. This is District of Squamish zoning bylaw, amendment bylaw for marine zones, number 2771, 2020. I will be handing it over to Ms. McJanet. There you are. I was looking for you on my screen.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Super. And apologies, I'm very backlit because it's so sunny outside. I'm just about to share my screen. One moment. So my name is Sarah McJanet, and I'm with the Planning Department, and I'm here with colleague Matt Gunn. Tonight we are presenting Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2771 for first reading. And I have a few slides and just a short presentation given the in-depth preceding sessions that we've had with Council in October 2020 and most recently on February 23rd, 2021. And I'll be able to provide any necessary clarifications and answer questions that you may have at the end. The purpose of Bylaw 2771 is to establish a suite of new marine zones, marine use definitions and regulations to align with local land and water regulations, with current and future uses, and community stewardship objectives, as well as social, cultural, ecological, and economic values. For a quick recap on the formal bylaw drafting stage, at our last council workshop on February 23rd, staff collected further input on the draft bylaw, and at this meeting, council directed the bylaw be revised and brought back for first reading. On March 6th, the mayor's drop-in was dedicated to marine zoning, and we produced a short podcast piece that will be available at District B-Sides shortly. We also sent emails to past focus group participants and key marine contacts that worked with us along the way to provide an update and links to the forthcoming bylaw presentation for first reading, and to highlight the ongoing public comment opportunity that forms part of the bylaw review process. I also reached out to several additional forestry sector knowledge and leaseholders, as well as new upland owners, to keep communications flowing and collect further insights. And we've been updating our marine zoning project page as well. For the public that is tuning in tonight, there are 5 new proposed marine specific zones, M1 through M5, as shown here. Plus, we have applied an existing conservation P4 zone to several marine focus areas for enhanced ecological protection. The new M zones are organized based on generalized categories of marine use, including marine general, navigation, mixed use, marine recreation, log storage, and marine transportation facility for ferry terminal use at Darrell Bay. Also, for clarity, this bylaw amendment, bylaw 2771, includes an updated consolidated Schedule A to the zoning bylaw for the municipality. The consolidated map series includes, of course, the new marine zones, as well as map updates for municipal, crown provincial, and a limited number of private parcels. They include previously adopted zoning amendments, improved alignment of zoning bylaws, zoning boundaries with legal parcel boundaries, updated zoning boundaries along the shoreline of the Mamquem River, as well as housekeeping amendments, such as applying park zoning with updated provincial park boundaries. We've also corrected a number of errors, such as rezoning private residential parcels currently zoned for park use. And we've applied a number of ecological reserve zones to environmentally sensitive areas that belong to the district. And we've been aligning district and crown lands with the Squamish 2040 official community plan land use designations. Briefly, we've done a number of edits and revisions since October, and we've listed these revisions in the staff report very clearly. They include things like marine term definition alignment and alignment with our floodplain management bylaw. We've added clarifications for allowable uses and marine calculations for things like siting, height, setbacks, and coverage. We've removed private moorage facilities from the M1 zone and done a number of edits to the M2 and M3 zones. Following council's input at the last workshop, we increased flexibility for parking requirements, as well as slightly increased visitor moorage provision. And also we added aquaculture as a use to the M1 general marine general zone. Also, staff would like to highlight a last-minute adjustment to the bylaw today prior to first reading. This is the amended bylaw that was added to the agenda today. Based on the diagram clarifying setbacks for water lots in the general regulations, staff were alerted that the individual setback tables to the M2, M3, and M5 zones respectively were misaligned and accidentally flipped. This has been corrected as shown on the slide. The corrected setbacks state that in these zones, buildings and structures are required to meet a 7.5 meter front setback against the sea dike, and this is consistent with the minimum waterside setback in the floodplain management bylaw. Further, buildings and structures are required to meet a minimum 3 meter rear setback at the back of the water lot against the navigation channel or outer water area. Finally, a text amendment has clarified in the general regs, subsection 45.1F, that moorage facilities and associated gangways providing shared access serving 2 abutting water lots may be located on a shared parcel line. Previously, it just stated sorry, I just lost my place, that just simply moorage facilities could abut the water lot, but we added moorage facilities and their associated gangways. Staff apologize they did not catch this following the diagram creation, and many thanks to the community member for pointing this out today. So with that, staff are recommending first reading of District of Squamish zoning bylaw, amendment bylaw 2771, and that subject to first reading, the district refer the bylaw to Squamish Nation, as well as federal and provincial agencies, as well as the SLRD for comment. The bylaw and mapping will be published to the project page for a almost 45-day comment period through the end of April 2021 due to the spring break at the end of March. A summary of comments and revisions will be brought back to before council at second reading, anticipated sometime in May, just depending on the intergovernmental referral review timing. With that, I thank you, and Matt and I are happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDevitt. I just want to confirm something, change from committee of the whole, that the housekeeping amendments no longer include Pioneer Way.
That is correct.
Okay, just I had declared a conflict earlier on that, and so I just want to make sure that it was not part of this bylaw reading. So I don't see it there, but I just wanted to confirm. Okay. All right, council, questions? Councilor Pettingill.
Yeah, thank you. I had two areas of questions, and the first one is on the marine fueling, and I haven't lost sight of where council was at in our last discussion. So I will try not to tread on that. But as written, if you want to do marine fueling, you are required to have both gas and alternative fuel. And I can understand that council wanted to enable gas fueling, but is there a reason why we would want to or expect to require it, and why if someone had a climate-friendly business model just wanted to provide electrical power, why we wouldn't support that?
Through the mayor, that is correct. So currently as defined under marine fuel sales, the definition means a marine service use in which fuel for boats is sold and includes both gasoline and alternative fuel service for hybrid or electric vessel propulsion systems. Based on the discussion that we've had with council and the district's interest in supporting and commitment to supporting climate action, we've added the alternative fuel service. I think that if someone came forward with a marine fuel sales that was only electric, that would be definitely a discussion with the municipality based on the definition and the requirement as it sits right now. We understand we haven't done an enormous amount of research around this, but I think it's sort of a transition time, and as electric vessel propulsion systems kind of increase in availability and in the market, I think that that would be something that is supported, obviously, but to exclude gasoline fuel service would be tricky for a number of vessels that are operating on based on regular gas.
And so, sorry, if I may clarify though, is the reason then, given what we already have for fueling infrastructure, why is that a reason why we feel we must require gas for new fueling as opposed to just allowing for it?
I'm not sure if I'm fully understanding the question. I think we tried to provide that that hybrid solution to ensure that not only is gasoline provided, but in addition, an alternative fuel service for hybrid electric vehicle propulsion systems would also be provided, but not at the exclusion of gasoline.
Right. So, but as I read this bylaw, if I want to open an all green electric fueling station, I would not be permitted to. I would also have to sell gas, as I read this as written. Is that correct?
I think the language, Mr. McDonough, is the gas required or is it allowed?
It's allowed in the definition, but the way that the definition is framed is that both of those fuel types are provided, and that they're both included. So as it stands, the definition basically states that both are provided. So in order for marine fuel sales for that use to meet right now as it stands and is worded, it would require both. So if council's intention is to ensure that a fully alternative fuel electric fuel service station is provided, we could try to reword that such that it could allow for simply electric.
Yeah, so okay, I may make a resolution to that effect later then. Just continuing a little bit for some clarity, and I can't remember if we discussed this, but is there a reason why it says gasoline specifically and not diesel, marine diesel, bunker fuel?
Through the mayor and through the chair, sorry. Gasoline is just sort of a broad term that's used, and we haven't drilled down into other specific fuel types, and we've followed essentially the context in our parent bylaw around terrestrial fuel sales that just states gasoline.
Okay. And just the other concern I had is we have defined in our, not in this part of the bylaw, but in the broader bylaw, alternative fuel service as either natural gas or propane or hydrogen, not necessarily green, so all very high emission fuels, or electric. And so my concern was that as worded as a hybrid, you know, your station could be uh, based on that other definition we already have, could be gasoline and natural gas, or gasoline and propane, and meet the requirements of this bylaw and not provide any zero or low emissions energy. I'm just wondering if staff has a comment on that. And this is another place where I might just suggest cleaning up the language.
No further comment from me, and I'll just look to Mr. Velanishkis or Mr. Buxton. I'm not sure if there's something further that they'd like to add in this case.
Hello. And nothing further to that effect, but I will say that I just looked at the definition of marine fuel sales, and it does allow for both. The way it's worded, to me, it does not dictate that you need to provide both. It just says that fueling stations include either one of the two fuel options. So I don't think, if the intent is to make sure that the zone allows for pure electric fueling station, I don't think an amendment would be needed here.
Thank you, Mr. Velasquez. That also got a thumbs up from Mr. Buxton.
Yeah, okay. And my recollection from our last discussion, though, was that this was going to require, and one of our intents with this was to require green power, and then council didn't want to disallow. But what we're saying now, it seems that is this doesn't actually require a fueling station to provide a green option.
No, not the way the definition is worded right now. It allows for either or.
Okay, thank you. I'll probably propose an amendment later. So that's all I had on this section. I had one other area, but I can stand down for someone else.
No, go ahead.
Okay, the other section, just on the clarity around Darrell Bay and the conversations with the province. Am I correct in thinking, while they want to make sure that their portion of the property anyways is used for mass ferry transportation and evacuations, beyond that, as long as it doesn't get in the way of that and is consistent with mass ferry transportation, they are comfortable with the activity?
Through the chair, so in our conversations and based on the ministerial order that exists for Darrell Bay, for the ferry terminal use, the ministerial order is very specific to the emergency recovery facility, or ferry, as they say, or the ferry terminal use. So the zoning, the M5 zoning that we've created is aligned with that, and then also includes some additional pieces, additional uses, which are that we've added marine transportation services, and then some minor accessory uses, which include minor vessel repair and office and surface parking. So the province has seen that M5 zone and did not have any sort of further comments just around the permitted principal and accessory uses that are there.
And thank you. Just if I might clarify, though, they didn't, you know, as long as it could be a public or a private ferry terminal, anything of a ferry terminal sort, they were okay with. Is that correct or accurate?
Through the chair, the conversation with the province did not get to that level around public and private for the ferry terminal use specifically. And so ferry terminal as a sort of a higher order use was named. But in terms of public access and access to the infrastructure that's there now, certainly there is no public access onto the onto the infrastructure that exists now, or public access that's built out for that zone near and around the ferry terminal itself at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Councilor Anderson, then Councilor Hartford.
Thank you. It is clear from my own observations and from other folks on the waterfront that we do have a sewage disposal problem within our marina areas relating to liveaboards. And I'm wanting to ask generally about provisions for addressing this. And I'm just reading from the proposed bylaw that liveaboards are allowed up in the marinas up to a maximum of 10, subject to provision of a pump out connection for land-based sewage disposal within 100 meters. 150 meters of any liveaboard. My question here is, based on the observation that in fact some of these boats do not have working motors. And I wonder whether staff has given further consideration to tools to address this situation. Do, for example, other marinas or other municipalities enforce that the vessel be movable, that is with a working motor? For example, when we discuss camping bylaws and share information about camping bylaws and vehicle camping, the aspect of the vehicle being able to be moved may come up, and in fact in regulations. So this is my question on this, is whether this is sufficient and whether more has been explored as to making it practical and enforceable, the use of sewage disposal facilities.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson, for that question. Indeed, through the chair, indeed, with introducing this subject condition in the zoning for liveaboards, the liveaboards are actually permitted accessory to a marina, subject to this connection, this pump out connection of land-based sewage disposal within a certain distance, that 150 meters of the liveaboard. Currently in the Blind Channel, there's only one kind of formalized pump out facility at the Squamish Harbor Authority. And certainly, you know, there are vessels that are not sort of seaworthy or regularly used or as a vessel. And so those marinas definitely are playing the role in terms of enforcement within the management of those marinas. But by setting this as a backstop in the M2 zone, it does provide more of a backstop for the municipality to take more action around liveaboards with this subject condition. In terms of ensuring that and going back and looking at all the vessels, we don't necessarily have you know, all the enforcement capacity to go and do that. I think we would be working with all the existing marina operators to highlight the desire over time to ensure that pump out connections are made available more broadly at marina facilities within the Blind Channel.
So the answer then, or part of it, is really beyond specifically this zoning bylaw as a package of initiatives. Thank you, Ms. Janet. I do have a couple of other questions, if I may, Chair.
Go ahead, please.
In the proposal, there's a proposal for P4 zoning in the Cattermole Slough, and I'm looking at the alignment of this this water lot, and it does have an odd shape. It's got kind of not quite a hockey stick, but down at the south end, it makes a couple of bends. And my question is, because we have in past discussions addressed our just collective uncertainty as to the future of the southwest corner, the marine employment or waterfront employment area of the Oceanfront Peninsula, my question is, does the planning department stay away from split zones? That is, because of the oddball shape, could it conceivably be considered to have a split zone, that is that particular water lot, and assign a different zoning to the southerly portion of it? Just as a scenario, is that something we stay away from, split zones?
Thank you for that question. Through the chair, definitely something that we could consider, especially at the sort of the dog leg area. typically and generally speaking, split zoning is not a practice that we try to follow. We try and follow, we try and match zoning boundaries to legally surveyed parcels that exist, but it's not always possible. And in fact, with this marine zoning, what we've encountered is that at the natural boundary does not follow tidy legal parcel boundaries. So there, in fact, is a little bit of split zoning that is happening in a number of areas where you've got the M zone up to the natural boundary with the water. So if with that Cattermole crown parcel in the dogleg that kind of comes out around the peninsula, we could definitely look to adjust that mapping if it's council's pleasure to do that, and to consider just a cleaner line between the P4 and then I'm assuming that the M4 zone or M1, sorry, the M1 Marine General would be the adjusted zoning that perhaps you're thinking about, but maybe Councillor Anderson, you could clarify.
Yes, that is, and I think you've answered my question adequately. So there may be some future scenario of this that just pending future developments and discussions within the process of this bylaw. Thank you, Ms. McJennet. Chair, I do have one additional question, unless you may wish to pass on to someone else at this time.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Thank you. My final question is regarding the M4 log storage zone, marine log storage zone. And I'll just start with the observation because there are definitely constraints, of course, with consideration to marine conservation and marine habitat protection. But we have fresh water is very important for log storage. And we have 4 creeks, the Squamish, Olison, Shannon, and Gonzales, with log handling long-standing in close proximity, or indeed at the bottom of them, going on along this area proposed for the M4 zoning. Now, this may introduce operational constraints and may also introduce capacity constraints. And my question is relating to the engagement that we should be pursuing. I understand through the report that you provided that you have made additional contacts with industry persons. And I'm just wondering whether the marine industry focus group that you refer to here and further outreach would include licensees, that is, the timber owners. We can speak with operational people, the tugboat people, and forestry consultants, but in the end, it's the people that own the timber that are the real stakeholders. And I just wondered where we're at in identifying them, and I suggest that this would also include Pemberton-based companies. Is there still time for this? And have we met with these timber right owners, if you like, licensees?
Thank you. Yes, engagement is ongoing with forestry sector. So since this item was flagged for us at the last session in February, staff have reached out to 3 and had conversation with 3 additional subject matter experts in the forest industry, one of whom is a forestry a licensee essentially, and that was today. So there's a lot of interest definitely in further discussion, and we'll continue to engage as we go through the process. Definitely there's, I guess, the 2 provisions in the bylaw that have been flagged and are highlighted are the minimum water depths for log storage, which upon further conversation, I think there's less concern around that because in Howe Sound, we do have some pretty deep depths in a number of the log storage areas. However, there are some areas near a number of the creeks that you mentioned, Councillor Anderson, that do have lower profiles and, you know, sort of like those sandy cobble beaches that are really great for forage fish. And the provision in the M4 zone that is probably of more concern is the 100-meter offset or setback from important fish habitat areas, including fish-bearing watercourses, tidal flats, salt marshes, sand cobble beaches, and such. So in looking and discussing in detail with the operations folks that are dealing with log transportation and the storage areas specifically, we will be hosting further discussion and looking at the specific tenure areas and the ability to progressively over time for new tenures or tenure renewals to work with the industry to look at how we might be able to offset and adjust, but we are very very alive to some of the realities, and the teredo worm, for example, that does impact the logs while they're in storage, and it's there's some seasonality, and obviously this activity fluctuates in terms of volumes of log transportation throughout the year, but we're definitely learning a lot, and in discussion, those are ongoing.
Thank you, Ms. McJanet, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Herford.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for your work on this, Ms. McJanet. I found the report great and really addressed most of the things we ran through last meeting, particularly the P zone in the Cattermole Slough. And Councillor Anderson touched on it, that strange shape of that lot with the, I think we're going to call it a hockey stick, but that last bit, and I'm curious, with the build out of the park as part of the ocean front, in that little piece of the P zone that comes across, I suppose the question is there value in mixed zoning, and will that limit the access in any way to the other to the uses that we were wanting to make sure that we protected up the Cattermole Slough, that were and how do those two things interact, or how do you see them interacting?
Thank you for that question, and through the chair, the P4 zone in terms of those crowned water lots, and as it exists on the western side of the slough, we took a closer look at it, and as mentioned in the report, there is about between kind of 27 and 33 meters of kind of open channel width. So in terms of navigation and access along that sort of eastern side, it's not a concern, and would not in itself kind of preclude employment uses on the oceanfront peninsula, which is something that has been raised by council. There might be, and realistically, there are other challenges that exist in terms of that kind of that habitat bench along the west, and in order to support greater access and use, it would require significant dredging, as we understand. So at this time, the P4 is the recommendation that was being put forward for that western edge, and it's not expected to kind of preclude access. The alternative zones that are set out, the suite of zones that are proposed as part of this bylaw, the M1 zone was not selected as a zone for that western side because of the community water access, and in terms of future infrastructure along that west side, or water access against the 3rd Avenue Road. That's the truck route and the entry to the terminals. So it's not an ideal place for any kind of community water access on that western edge, and that's why the M1 zone wasn't chosen there. As that crown water lot extends kind of further south towards the tip of the peninsula and adjacent to the future oceanfront park, it's a little bit awkward because the extent of the CD 69 zone, encompasses that entire park area, and then there's the terminal I3 general industrial zone. So if we were to reduce that P4 zone, or that dogleg area, it would definitely kind of be an isolated little pocket of M1, but it is like an open water area adjacent to the park. So we could definitely consider that.
My concern thank you for that. My concern was around maybe needing to travel through that zone to access the ones up further up the channel. And is that a limitation that would exist, or is this am I?
Just for clarity, in terms of a use, in terms of navigation use coming up and or through that, just for clarity too, what we've done in the general regulations, just so council and community are well aware, is that navigation is a use that can happen everywhere within our marine zone. So as a use, it's totally allowed. Whether or not it's navigable physically is obviously a different question. Yeah.
Okay, no, thank you. I think that addresses my concerns in that particular area. And the last thing is, there was some talk of aquaculture last time. Could you just remind us of the definition of aquaculture as it relates to these regulations?
Of course, through the chair, following council's our workshop last time, we added aquaculture use. The use is already, we added aquaculture use to the M1 zone. And this is a use that's already defined in the parent zoning bylaw to 2200. It's currently defined as the controlled cultivation, rearing, and harvesting of shellfish and marine plants. So it does not include marine or land-based sort of fin fish. And we also, when we added the aquaculture use to the M1 zone, we added a subject condition, which also just highlights that aquaculture activities and structures shall be permitted subject to licensing under the Fisheries Act and tenure for aquatic crown land approved by the province of British Columbia where required. So it's the federal government that licenses aquaculture, although I did learn that it's actually the province that deals with marine plants under the Ministry of Forest, Lands and Natural Resource Operations. So there's a bit of a split there, but we would that use would only be subject to all necessary licensing from the federal and the provincial governments.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice, and then Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. And with respect to this this hockey stick piece, my concern was similar to other councillors. I don't know whether it was last term or the term before. We gave the developer of the oceanfront at that time permission to have a travel lift operation down in that corner, which would cross the path. And it'd be more like the situation that we might be familiar with at Granville Island, where this thing carries boats over the water, drops them down, picks them up and goes back and then puts them up in dry land. And the people just kind of go by when it's happening. But they typically are built with two rather narrow piers sticking out over the water, and the boat comes in between, and this thing goes out and scoops it up. And so that was the concern I had, was whether or not an operation like that, and I have no idea whether it will still happen, but something like that would be frustrated by this zoning. And so my thought was to have a split zone, as Councillor Anderson suggested, just starting when you're going south out of the Cattermole, just starting where it makes its first bend and goes from there more or less to the end of that green strip and catches the two bends. Because the operation that was contemplated from the developer was right at that very southwest tip. It was not, there was nothing farther up the Cattermole. That was always a soft edge. So it's just that very end piece that may have in the future, depending on how it develops and so forth, it may have an operation similar to that where boats have to cross it. There might be a pier infrastructure going out to allow the pickup of boats. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. McDevitt.
Thank you for that comment and question, Councillor Race. And indeed, I think just for clarity, are you speaking of the boat lift? Would that be the same as a boat lift? Yes, thank you. That's a permitted use in Block C of the Waterfront Employment Marine Center for the CD 69 zone. And so with the points made tonight, we can definitely take this back and connect with the oceanfront development team, and then also look to adjust the zoning for tonight's presentation and request for the bylaw consideration of first reading. It's hard, we can't adjust sort of the mapping on the fly as we could a text amendment to the bylaw itself. But depending on where council sits, we can definitely adjust the zoning, and that could be captured in the minutes to bring back you know, a revised Schedule A before second reading.
Mr. Valencia?
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that looking at the map, our district park, which is the oceanfront park, starts before the first bend in that hockey stick. So any pier that kind of goes into a navigable area where you could potentially navigate would have to cross district park, which is quite unlikely. So once the straight section of that hockey stick ends on the software end and it starts to bend, and it's really unlikely that somebody would be able to build you know, an access facility through the district park into the deep side of the water. Just wanted to clarify that.
Councilor Race?
Thank you. Then the only thing I could suggest is just to touch base with the oceanfront people and see if that use is somehow frustrated by that zoning. It was a key part some years ago of the plan for that corner. So if it's moved or just been abandoned, then I'd agree with you, maybe no need for it.
Thank you, Councilor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just had a quick follow-up on our discussion at the last meeting about the location of parking and allowance of parking kind of further afar. As I read it in the proposed bylaw, it doesn't actually speak to what I thought was one of the key components of our discussion, that there be some sort of shuttle service available if the parking was going to be further afield. And so I'm just wondering if staff can speak to that. And then also the proposal currently is that it just include the downtown core, so a 400-meter kind of buffer. And I'm wondering why we didn't explore a little bit further, knowing that parking in that downtown core is already quite challenging.
Go ahead, Ms. McDermott.
Thank you for that question through the chair. So with the direction from council to increase flexibility around parking requirements. So previously we had just sort of a text 400-meter buffer allowance for the location of off-site parking, subject to a covenant, essentially securing that off-site parking use. We then looked at, and based in the spirit of council's request, we looked at the downtown area and then the existing map that we have within the parking part of the parent bylaw. And when you measure off basically the distance from the edge of those Mamquam Blind Channel water lots to sort of the furthest reaches of downtown, it is greater than 400 meters. Although for the properties kind of on the up against the estuary with 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue, we thought that it wasn't super realistic to see that there would be sort of banks of parking, or you know, that doesn't definitely wasn't kind of an area I think that we've contemplated for any kind of, you know, parking infrastructure or structure. So we thought that the Schedule D map, it's a little bit greater than 400 meters from some of those water lots. And then similarly, it also includes lands kind of north of Pemberton as well. So to that point, we thought that the Schedule D map was a reasonable kind of polygon to highlight for parking. In terms of the comment just around increased flexibility and allowance for parking that could be supported through a shuttle transportation, we didn't add that explicitly as a subject condition requirement. It seemed that requiring parking with a shuttle service for sort of like individual projects might be quite onerous, and that's something that from a larger transportation planning perspective would be something that we would want to look at for the downtown more broadly, and then that we could look at that through further transportation planning that we're doing for downtown.
Okay, just one quick follow-up on the polygon. Appreciate that explanation. One piece that just jumped out at me, for example, is like the Adventure Center parking lot, not necessarily throwing that out there, but it is one of the few actual parking locations, and it's not currently included in that polygon, and I'm just curious about that piece. And if we can expand that.
Certainly that's something that we could look at, and that does exist as kind of an area that is used for parking for sure. In terms of the longer term sort of ability and parking provision there, I think there's probably further discussion across the district and with partners just around how much parking is long term will be available there and for that use. But we can take that input and definitely do more review around this.
All right, any other questions? Councilor Pagano?
Yeah, thank you. Just want to clarify, the M5 zone, I understand a portion of the area is under a ministerial order, but as I understand it, the M5 zone covers a larger area inclusive of public property, by which I mean district property, that is not under the ministerial order. Is that correct?
Through the chair, for clarity, the ministerial order area is under the M5 zone. And there are some, there's a small portion of for the district owned upland area, that was not included in the M5 zone. We tried to align it very closely with the ministerial order. The North Bay at Darrell Bay, while it's part of the ministerial order area, because of the that's not an area that the North Bay is not an area that's kind of part and parcel or used as part of the ferry terminal. So that was proposed as M1 for the North Bay.
Okay, sorry. So I misunderstood that then. So the M5 then, does it align exactly or with the ministerial order?
It should, yes. With the main part of the terminal, but the North Bay is zoned M1, and that's technically still part of the ministerial order area.
Okay, and then sorry, and then the district sort of parking lot area is M1. Is that what you're suggesting?
The upland is still maintains its I3 zoning for the district lots.
Okay, thank you.
That hasn't been adjusted.
Thank you.
Councilor Anderson?
Thank you. In the past, when we have discussed this marine zoning package, I brought up the issue of the alignment of the water lot in front of the Juanea Park that is proposed for M3 zoning. That alignment is not in mid-channel, and the reason for that is because of the previous use on the easterly shore, which was a barge loadout for the previous sawmill, which won't be coming back. My question is, when we consider the future scenarios of realigning this, and staff has indicated this isn't presently in the work plan to address with Transport Canada, but should it be, this may open up opportunity for example, visitor mooring on that water lot. It's been pointed out throughout the report or in various passages that there is a scarcity of visitor mooring, and this is a concern thinking long term. But my question is, what would this mean for this M3 zoning if we change the alignment of that channel in concert with Transport Canada? Do we need to rewrite the zone for M3? It is an oddball alignment, and it is not a very common one. Normally, we're looking at equidistant between the shores. as to an alignment like this, but it does constrain the geography of that water lot and for potential future uses. So my question is, what does this mean for the bylaw as we draft it today, the future scenario of a realignment of the water lot boundary?
Thank you for the comments and questions through the chair. Should any of the water lot boundaries be adjusted in the future, then we would look to amend the bylaw to better align the zoning boundary with any legal lot boundary changes. And that's not just the case for that municipal water lot, but for other water lots as well. So over time, we would look to kind of continue as housekeeping to adjust and accommodate as needed.
Thank you.
I don't have anyone else on my list, so happy to move on to comments or a motion on the floor. Councilor Reese?
I'll move first reading.
Councilor Anderson? Councilor Herford seconds that. Comment? Do you have a comment, Councilor Reese?
Sure. I'll be brief. We have discussed this several times before as a council in open meeting, but this is something that I've waited for quite a number of years, and I'm happy to see now the rubber really hitting the road, as you might say, with this zoning starting to take shape. This represents a lot of work. There's a lot of different levels to marine zoning that may not be apparent on zoning on the land. And lots of different users pass through it, lots of different stakeholders, and it's been a significant consultation period. I can remember meeting with Ms. McJanet and Ms. Besego. Gee, it must have been 3 or 4 years ago when this process, the Marine Action Strategy, actually started. And there's been an awful lot of work and consultation since then. So I commend staff for this. I think this is a really good thing. There might be the odd little tune-up coming along based on comments, but this, I think, is a great first step, and happy to support first reading.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson and Councilor Pettengill and Councilor French.
Thank you. I also would like to commend staff for the work done, the research work, but not least the engagement. And it seems to me that staff have been very responsive and nimble in addressing concerns and information that's come forward. I'd like to make a general comment, and this is part, of course, of not only the zoning bylaw review, but the Marine Action Strategy. And I think it would have been desirable that some further work be done on other aspects of the Marine Action Strategy, not least needs and opportunities assessment would have helped this bylaw process. However, some of that work has been done along the way. But I will just highlight one issue. At this stage in the process, we won't be engaging it at this time, but we need to consider it in the near future and to give it due consideration as we realize the rest of the Marine Action Strategy. And that is zoning for Site B and Squamish terminals. And I'll just highlight some policy background that we might have considered, all of us, with respect to these two areas zoned presently for I3. That is not specifically marine, but perhaps we should have been, and we should consider a specific marine zoning for these areas. In the case of Squamish terminals, the province has already done this. In 2005, through the port strategy and its shareholder letter to the property owner, which is BCR Properties, it specifically spelled out that this is for port use only. And so the province has decided it's not for general industrial, it's for port use. And this is quite explicit. In the case of Site B, we have the estuary plan, several OCP policies, the intent of which are clear, and regional district, regional growth strategy, which has a policy item relating to Site B and Squamish terminals, and agreements at the time of transfer to the Squamish Nation, agreements with the province, suggesting that or indicating the significance of Site B for marine-related uses. And these are big strategic issues. We can revisit them later, but I think they're very important, and they are important beyond Squamish, but for the interior and the province as a whole. Thank you. Otherwise, I'm happy to move support at first reading.
Thank you. Councillor Pennington.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the work on this. I know it has been a long time in the works. I do have two small changes I would like to propose, and I'm not sure if that's best done with a comment or an amendment or two amendments. Chair, some direction on that?
Are you wanting to provide staff guidance to look at something, or do you actually want to propose zoning wording?
I'm not fussy about the wording. I mean, maybe I can just sort of say what I would like, and then I can reframe it as an amendment if that's desired.
Because we may pass first reading and direct staff to re-examine the definition of something, or, right? Prior to second, or if
Yeah.
you want, would that make sense, Ms. Arthurs? Yeah, so move first reading with a direction to staff of what you want to change.
Okay, sure. And so the two things are, one, I would like the marine fuel sales definition to be updated to permit but not require gasoline fuel, and to require electric or zero emissions fuel. And
Is that the only amendment you're proposing? Let's do them all at once.
okay, and then the other one, and if we're doing those amendments, I might test them separately. The other one was just in the intent of the marine, the M5 zone, just to add that the intent of the zone is to provide for and regulate marine transportation infrastructure at the Darrell Bay Ferry Terminal that does not preclude emergency or public service. And I can speak to both of those if there's a seconder.
Let's do them one at a time. What was that, Councillor Stoner?
I was going to second the first amendment.
Okay, we have a seconder for the first amendment. And this is on the change in definition for fueling station.
Yes, thank you. And it seems that, I mean, my recollection is that in our last discussion, we said both were required, and now it sort of seems that both are an option. And so I think it is a little bit confusing, and some of the wording around alternative fuel service that's already defined in sort of a different way than we intend here in our bylaws. So I think for clarity, I believe it is our intent to enable gasoline, and I think my understanding was there's support to require zero emissions fuel, and so I'm just trying to make that much more explicit. And so whatever wording does that, I think would be a good idea for clarity. And I think that, again, meets our climate goals, but provides people the flexibility to provide gas if they wish to.
Other comments on the amendment? Councillor Reyes.
Yeah, I'm not going to support this. I think it's as much as the intent might be laudable, I think it is just impractical. I'm not an expert on electric powered boats. In fact, I think there are very few around today. I know BC Ferries has a couple, but they're actually running on hybrid systems because one of the significant infrastructure changes is the charging for fast charging at the different terminals, so that they're not parked there all night. They can actually just charge up before they head back on a return trip to wherever they're coming from. So to require any kind of a fuel dock to have a charging system, which would have to be a fast system, by the way. Docks are expensive, and fuel docks are usually just one or two or maybe three boats long, and so you can't have one parked there for 12 hours while it charges up. And it would be a bigger system than in a car. It's just a lot more to push around. To do that right off the bat, I think is going to guarantee that there won't be a fuel dock in Squamish. And of any sort. I just think it would be quite unrealistic. I would be happy with an amendment that says either or both, as the choice may be. But to try to impose an electric charging system means that it could be literally decades before something like that actually makes sense with the boat market the way it is. So I would not support this amendment.
Any other comments? just add mine, and I'll come back to you. I think, I think we know we have to go in this direction. I think there's already movement afoot to electrify our ferry fleet. I don't know where small boat craft are at in that regard. I think this is something that requires consultation and understanding from marina owners at this point and those that will be building them in the future. So I think to me, at this stage, we would look at the options. And certainly the smart people will be planning for the future. So I mean, bringing infrastructure to the front of the water lot to eventually service a low carbon fuel recharge. But I'm a little bit nervous of requiring it at this point. And I simply don't know whether the technology exists or how many boats are traveling under electric power. So in the same way that we're requiring electric vehicle charging infrastructure in buildings, but not having it built out entirely, so that's roughed in, I think there's probably a happy medium here, but I'm not going to support the amendment as stated. Councilor Herford.
Thank you. My feeling is that it is along the lines of actually both of the two previous speakers, where I think that the future is headed this way. And as much as we like to drive change, I don't feel that the markets exists for these chargers at this point. But I could see some cleaning up of the language to further clarify what we mean there, and not requiring gasoline. But I think it's pretty safe to assume that that's going to be a necessity of the business that opens there at this point. And perhaps there's a look through our community climate action plan lens could be applied to this particular topic, and some comments can be added for second reading around it. But I'm not prepared to support it, the amendment at this point.
Councilor Pango?
Yeah, I wanted to point out, I have looked a bit because I thought, it might come up, but there are quite a number of exciting small battery powered electric boats coming online, very, very quiet, very fast. And the industry is moving just as fast, if not faster, than the electric car industry. And so this is not a way off in the future thing. The other thing, we are not, and much to my I would prefer otherwise, but we aren't mandating the balance or anything. So you could technically get in with one single very low level charger and meet the requirements of this. I think it at least starts people down that road. You can put a level 2 charger in your home for $1,000. And so I don't think this is an onerous ask. It's not like, we're requiring a 50-50. I think this is just sort of saying to people, the future is here. Let's make sure our community is at least almost ready. If not, if we're not going to lead the way, at least we can kind of be coming along. And so I think this is useful. And again, my recollection of our last conversation was that both were actually required. And so yeah, I would encourage people to support this because we aren't being specific on the amount. And so you could still be 98% gas if you wanted to as a fueling station.
Any other speakers? Okay, I'll call the vote. Any opposed to the amendment? Councilor Reese, French, Herford, Anderson, Elliott, opposed, motion fails. The amendment fails. Go back to the main motion, which is first reading. Any further comments? Oh, sorry, Councilor Pagnell, did you want to try your other amendment?
Yeah, so just to clarify, is essentially the intent as defined, and I can read it out again, but with the added piece that does not preclude emergency or public service. And I will speak to that if there's a seconder.
What does that wording mean? I'm not clear on what you mean by that.
Well, the idea is that, the province has said it's fine with this being, or expects it to be a ferry for ferry infrastructure. And they have talked about the importance of making it clear that this is for emergency access. And so I am just suggesting that whatever we do there should not preclude public or emergency access. So any sort of activity could happen there, but it can't make it impossible then to have a public ferry service there or emergency ferry service there. And try not to get into the rationale for that.
Is that even allowable under the provincial order?
Through the chair, I would have to have a closer look at this. I can't speak to this at this time, so would have to come back with some more detail around the ministerial order, and we could have further discussion with the province on this piece.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. You're on mute.
I'm not an expert on this, but this is also one of those situations that I think would need a little bit more research. I was at a meeting last term with the Ministry of Highways and Mayor Heinzman and staff concerning the possible use of Darrell Bay by wood fiber, and saw the map, and that whole South Bay is the subject of the ministerial order. And so you can just imagine it as one big water lot for the exclusive use of the province and the ferry terminal. And the discussion at the table was that if wood fiber wanted to run passengers back and forth to wood fiber for work crews or something like that, that was going to require an order in council to allow that to happen. So I think it's not the kind of thing that we can affect here. It's not a normal water lot like in the Blind Channel. It's a ministerial order. And so it's something different. So I would think we would want to look into exactly what it means before we started trying to change it. Our zoning would not have, to my knowledge, would not have any effect on it.
So, and given that some staff are unsure of your requested amendment, could I suggest that it's something that you ask staff to look into prior to second reading rather than trying to amend?
Yeah, yes, I could accept that.
So can you make that motion?
Yeah, so I guess I will ask that staff look into us adding into our zoning that the use does not preclude emergency or public service.
There, emergency or public access?
Service. I can speak to the clarification if there's a seconder or.
I think you should clarify before you get a seconder.
Well, I'm just trying to be clear because there's been comments that, well, it's going to be ferry infrastructure. There's going to be areas the public can't go. So I'm not trying to say the public should be able to walk anywhere and everywhere on the site, but I'm saying if there's a ferry service or services, it should not sort of preclude the also operating a public ferry service. So where the public could get on a boat and do something, go somewhere, but doesn't mean they have to have access to every point on the site. So I'm trying to draw that distinction.
Okay, so you want staff to look into the M5 zone doesn't include emergency access or the ability for a private operator to establish a ferry service in that area.
Yeah, public ferry service. Correct.
So you would like that brought back for second reading?
Yes. Please.
All right, so is there a seconder to that amendment to first reading? It's not changing the wording of the bylaw, it's simply asking as part of the contingent on first reading is that staff look into this a little bit further for second reading. Is there a seconder? Councilor Herford, you're seconding that? Any discussion? All right, any opposed to the amendment? Councilor Race opposes, Councilor Anderson opposes, motion carries. So the amendment carries. So the main motion with that wording added from Councilor Pettengill. Any further comments? Councilor Becker.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the support in the second resolution. I think for me that first amendment was pretty important when I look at our climate action plan and the pace. We have to get a 45% reduction in emissions, not, our per capita reduction. It's an absolute reduction. And so I think something like this is really important. And so I think in everything that comes forward, we have to be pushing and leading on this. And I don't think we're doing that there. And I believe that's critical as we're building out new transportation infrastructure. So, I realize that we're just at first reading, so I'll leave my mind open for further readings and maybe I would encourage people to give this some more thought. But I'm afraid that piece is a deal breaker for me now. But there's a lot I do like in this, and I hope to maybe we can have a change of heart. Maybe I'll have a change of heart by second reading. But I'm not ready to support this without that amendment at this point.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands, I'll call the Councilor French. Was that a hand?
Yeah, thanks. Just wanted to acknowledge the patience of marine users who have waited a long time for this, and thank them for their valuable contribution as the work has been done, the good work that has been done by staff. And I'm very much looking forward to getting the feedback from the other government bodies that we'll be awaiting feedback from. So I'm supporting first reading.
Thank you. All right, so I'll call the question on first reading and referring the bylaw to Squamish, and federal provincial agencies and the SLRT. Any opposed? Once again, no opposes. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. McDevitt. All right, moving on, we have first three readings. The first up is District of Squamish Fees and Charges Bylaw. This is Amendment Bylaw number 2766, 2021.
Okay, hello everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just share my screen. Apologize for my children in the background there. Hopefully they don't stage me here. Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. For anyone tuning in, my name is Devin Kianaga. I'm a municipal engineer at the district. And tonight I will be presenting proposed changes to the fees and charges bylaw to be considered for first three readings. So this was brought before the Committee of the Whole for discussion back on November 10th. After the Committee of the Whole, we sent the proposed changes to industry representatives for review, and they did not have any comments. Since the CAL and industry review, we have completed some minor changes, and I included attachments to the report to Council that clearly show the proposed changes to the bylaw and which highlight changes that have occurred since the Committee of the Whole meeting. So in this presentation, I will walk through the key changes we are proposing, with the first being related to servicing agreements. This is a minor change to some of the wording, and that's mainly just to bring it in line with our historic application of these fees. Since the Committee of the Whole, we did make a small change to improve clarity on how we apply the servicing agreement fees. That's specifically to the wording, including engineering and contingency, because that can create some confusion as to what the fee is based on. The second key set of changes are to the municipal work permit fee structure. We are implementing a per square meter unit rate, which is based on market rates for land, which were provided to us by our real estate department. So this is to help minimize impacts to the public due to development-related construction, such as long-term sidewalk closures. We are also retaining the existing $200 fee for filming and commercial events because they already have fees associated with the amount of space they're taking up. Now, since the Committee of the Whole, we did add more information to the section, as well as a map to the work permit fee, or to delineate the downtown area. We also added some wording to discourage working without a permit. We also added wording that will exempt not-for-profit organizations from municipal work permit fees. Now note, this doesn't exempt them from the permit, but it exempts them from the fees. Now the third key set of changes are to the soil and tree management fees, and this is to increase clarity and to align with regulations. Now, we did catch a typo just prior to this meeting, and I apologize for that. It's specifically, I don't know if you can actually see my mouse, but it's specifically the charge of $5,150. That should read $5,150 plus $5 per tree proposed to be removed or already removed. And so that will be added as an amendment to the motion. Finally, we are making changes to the landfill, or we're proposing changes to the landfill tipping fees, and that's to align with the original intent of our previous changes that we made, and also to align with the current process that is in place. We did make one small change since committee of the whole, and that's specifically regarding drywall, where it says pre-1990. So we want to delete that, and that's to align with our current process, which includes all drywall. So with that, recommendation is that council approve the following resolution: that the District of Squamish give first 3 readings to the District of Squamish Fees and Charges Bylaw 2012-2007, or 2012-2007, Amendment Bylaw number 2766-2021, with the following addition: that in Section H of the Amendment Bylaw, a charge of $5 per tree proposed to be removed or already removed is added to the $5,150 fee in the second row. So with that, I will open it up for questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? Council Pagano.
Yeah, thank you. In our report, when I was reading through it, one thing that jumped out at me is that an earlier draft had put up the cost for a ton of asphalt to dispose of that at $20, and we put it down to $5 and no change. And when I started thinking about that, I was a little bit surprised, because as I understand it, asphalt's fairly recyclable, and it costs just as much to dispose, if we pass this as proposed, 20 tons of asphalt as 4 tires with rims or 5 mattresses. And you know, with asphalt being toxic and so on, I'm just wondering how this aligns with our waste reduction strategies and so on. It seemed like a bit of a strange choice not to keep that at the $20 that we had proposed initially.
Sure. So I might turn this to Chris if you're on the line. Are you able to answer this question?
Mr. Wickham, can you join us?
I am. Sadly, I can't answer that question. The tipping fee came from our solid waste team, and I don't have the details on where that number came from. The idea absolutely is to encourage people to take it elsewhere. We have enough through our own works for the landfill. So. But I can't tell you where that came from and how it compares to asphalt recycling and trucking fees elsewhere. I'm sorry.
Bit of a conundrum. Any other questions? Councilor French?
Yeah, I'd like to know a little bit more about striking the pre-1990 from drywall, because my understanding is that relates to the potential presence of asbestos, which makes the processing of scrap drywall a little more complicated and expensive. So does this now mean that we will be taking asbestos-laden drywall? And then how do we deal with that?
Go ahead, Mr. Wiggum.
Yeah, through the chair. I know the answer to this one. Yes, what we wanted to do was, instead of creating a policy on what drywall we do and do not take through the fees and charges bylaw, we wanted to just strike that out of the fees and charges bylaw itself, and then use our policy, which is a little bit more nimble, to work on what we accept and what we don't accept. We are working on a program right now to allow small amounts of drywall to be taken from so your home rental project type thing that is untested. So right now, in order to decide whether or not it has asbestos in it, any contractor, for example, for the health and safety of their own crews, and the homeowner, et cetera, will have things tested before they do the work. They'll know what it is. They'll have certs on it. And then we can deal with them. Where we run into trouble is where people are doing their own work in their home. They don't know what they have. They show up, they say they don't, they pretend they know what they have, and then we can end up with asbestos in our workflow or process flow. And so what we are working on is a pilot project for later this year, where we'll be able to take small amounts of whatever kind of drywall, and we have a contractor who's able to deal with that drywall. So we're not ready to go any more public on that than we are today, but what this does is lay the groundwork for that sort of program.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Bengo.
Thank you, Chair. This is maybe a process question. I guess I'm sort of thinking in my head, I might move second reading, but ask that staff come back with either an explanation of how these charges generally align with our waste reduction strategies, or an amendment on that asphalt price. And for clarity, I don't want to get into debating the price on every single item. It's just that one thing just jumped out at me as really strange in the context of everything else. And so I'm just looking for some sort of assurance that these are all in line and this isn't just a mistake on this one item, or, you know, should this really be at $20 before we proceed to third reading? And I don't know if that's the best way to achieve that. It just seemed like such a strange in the context of everything. But
I guess my question to staff is there any way we can get the answer tonight so that I can defer a decision on this for a few minutes so we could recess? Or do we need to proceed? Because there's no one available from the solid waste team to answer our question tonight.
I'm working on getting the solid waste team on the phone here, so we can defer this for a short period if you would like and come back to it.
We recess for 10 minutes then? Would that be helpful, Mr. Wiggum?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll come back at 7:35. Welcome back, everyone. And whether or not Mr. Wickham has an answer for us, it was really just nice to have a break. So, hi, Mr. Wickham.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to phone a friend. And Councillor Pettingill, that was an excellent question. You stumped me. Nora, you can have a caramel apple in 1 minute. I'm talking to the mayor. Okay. And council. So the answer is that, yes, actually $5 a ton is similar to what it would cost to recycle in the city. So in the same order of magnitude. At $20 a ton, we got 0 last year at the landfill. This actually ends up being a problem. There is a beneficial use for cover and for road building. We actually require some. And so we get some through our own projects, but not necessarily enough. And so I guess this is a bit of an exercise in trying to gauge the market. So if this year we have a $5 a ton, we end up with more than we'd like, then we'll have to come back cap in hand and say you were right, and put it up to $7 a ton. But we're in the right ballpark. 20 was too high. 10 is probably too high, understanding the market. So we think 5 is about right, and we'd like to give it a whirl.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wickham, for tracking that down for us. It's really helpful. And I was saying while we were on the break that maybe your team was all out mountain biking because of the nice weather, so I'm glad you got hold of someone. All right. So I think we've answered everyone's questions unless there's any other hands at this point. And so staff propose first 3 readings of this fees and charges bylaw update. For someone that'd like to move that. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Pettengill. Any further comments? Yes, Councillor Stoner.
Just a quick comment of thanks to staff for their work on this and for the quick call a friend. That is quick action there so that we can get this conversation wrapped up. I do think it is important that we do, because I am particularly excited to see the piece on the municipal works permit fees come forward. I think that is something that something I've been looking for a while. So I'm excited to move first 3 readings of this, and thanks staff for continuing to move this project along. Thanks.
Yes. Any other further comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, we're on to item 9B2, District of Squamish Subdivision and Development Control Bylaw, Amendment Bylaw number 2821. And this is with regards to lighting updates. And Ms. Hamilton, nice to see you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right. And I'm going to, let me see the screen here.
Yes, that's great.
Wonderful. This is my first attempt of presenting from home. So I'm glad this is working. So good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Hamilton. I'm a planner with the Community Planning Department, and I'm presenting to you today Amendment Bylaw 2821, 2021 for the Subdivision Development Control Bylaw, focused on lighting changes. So street lighting is a part of the streetscape review for new developments and subdivisions, and it becomes a part of district infrastructure to run and maintain. So for background, some of the challenges the current bylaw is facing is that it only has 2 approved light fixtures, which has led to a number of different lighting fixtures throughout our downtown and throughout Squamish. The image on this slide shows 6 different light poles and fixtures in our downtown alone as an example of this issue. So new developments were often proposing their own unique street lighting, resulting in different lighting fixtures, qualities, illumination levels, and lighting colors. Lighting design is complicated, and the bylaw was lacking detail that staff needed to properly review lighting designs specific to Squamish's needs. In 2019, staff began a lighting review that consisted of comparing existing lights with new lights being proposed by the current major developments such as waterfront landing and oceanfront developments. Staff internally reviewed multiple different fixtures for durability and maintenance, manufacture, for procurement and replacement, cost, location, consistency, and aesthetics. Staff also went on night lighting reviews throughout the district to measure light illumination levels, review lighting complaint areas, and assess safety and lighting aesthetics. In June 2019, staff put out an official request for information to request fixtures, particularly for the downtown, to review. An internal review team consisting of planners, engineers, public works, and even our environment teams reviewed the 6 lighting design submissions. In 2020, staff hired PBX Engineering Lighting Designer Specialists to help staff create the new district street lighting design criteria in accordance with municipal standards. As a result, all of this review work, a new District Squamish street lighting design criteria document was created. Highlights of the document include reduced maximum color temperatures to support amber light and lower warmer lighting temperatures, which are in line with the latest research that supports that higher blue tone light colors negatively impact human circadian rhythm and impact mammal and amphibian and insect natural cycles. It highlights special light color maximums for trail lighting within riparian areas and environmentally sensitive ecosystems, specifically to reduce impacts on salmon. Clear regulation for staff to review lighting designs, and it has clear regulations for lighting professionals to follow. As an added benefit, the design criteria also follows a similar layout to the municipal technical guidelines, which further adds to its user clarity and functionality. The document includes technical drawings to provide further clarity of pole dimensions and placement and light fixture types. Highlights of this section include one consistent streetscape lighting fixture for downtown, waterfront, and oceanfront, a gateway-specific pole to enhance key entrances to Squamish off Highway 99, added pedestrian and bikeway lighting for urban active transportation streets, and all fixtures approved are dark sky compliant. And they all allow only LED fixtures with reduced wattages, which is shown to increase energy efficiency. Amendments to the subdivision development control bylaw to reflect and reference the new design criteria document are all listed in this table. They include a brand new lighting section of the bylaw that references the new design criteria document, changes to the trail lighting tables, and minor changes throughout the bylaw in relation to lighting. The following key policies within the district official community plan are pertinent to this project. They include policy that supports protecting sensitive ecosystem, reducing municipal emissions, and supporting energy efficient infrastructure, creating a welcoming sense of arrival, enhancing active transportation options, and ensuring that they are accessible and safe. And in general, the lighting changes proposed are in line with our policy to protect public health, safety, and environment. The lighting amendments proposed address two of Council's key priorities: the planet and environment, because these lighting changes will be beneficial for protecting environmentally sensitive areas where trail lighting is required, and by generally reducing the overall energy consumption of street lighting. Neighborhood connectivity in public spaces, because light color, light aesthetics, and location of light plays a significant role in nighttime public space activities, placemaking, wayfinding, and enhancing transportation options. So due to the highly technical nature of lighting changes, greater public engagement is at just IAP2 level of inform. But staff do plan to engage with the public through IAP3 level of consult as part of the Streetscape Guidelines project as we further explore an appropriate lighting fixture for Cleveland Avenue, which has not been identified yet in this design criteria document. Staff recommend that District of Squamish Subdivision Development Control Bylaw number 2649, 2018, Amendment Bylaw number 2821, 2021 be given first, second, and third reading. Alternatively, Council could refer the bylaw back to staff and request more information or changes to the proposed amendment bylaw. Thank you. At this time, I welcome any comments or questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Questions? Councilor Anderson?
Thank you. Ms. Hamilton, in the report to council, you discussed the downtown as a special zone for consideration, and you highlight 6 different downtown light fixtures in a set of illustrations. The first type, which is found along Cleveland, has experienced some difficulties lately. They're aging, and quite a number of them are in need of repair, as staff is well aware, and citizens have pointed this out in discussions with staff. My question is, will the new LED lighting technology help us avoid this situation in future? The issue is that these lampposts or designs are difficult to repair with the out of date or no longer available fixtures. Or should it be addressed in the bylaw or design criteria? That is, to explicitly address the need for standard versus exotic equipment. Standard equipment that can be easily replaced. I didn't note this being addressed explicitly in the design criteria document. I wonder if you may be able to speak to this.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, as I mentioned, Cleveland Avenue was actually we have not specified a light fixture particularly for the street yet because of the complications and the different dynamic of this being our main street. And we are trying to pick a pole and a fixture that will work with the existing pole alignment and the existing pole infrastructure that we have in the ground without trying to basically redo the whole streetscape. So there are some challenges with Cleveland Avenue particularly, which is why we will address this as part of the larger streetscape guideline review of the whole street. We'll be looking at aesthetics, we'll be looking at functionality, and ensuring that these products can be something that can be we can hopefully over time we will be able to have them consistently available to repair. So the lights that we have on Cleveland in particular are several decades old, and which is why we cannot find them anymore. But what we did do in all of the lighting that we did specify in the guidelines is we ensure that they were from reputable manufacturers and companies that have delivered over the decades. And so that the hope is that we don't come into this issue with, in 50 years having to totally redesign we won't come into this issue in 10 years and not have the same light fixture, but that particularly in 50 years, it's likely that we will have to totally reimagine all of this. So sorry, that was a long explanation. Hopefully that addresses some of your comments.
Any other questions? Councilor Pengill?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the attention to lighting, color, and brightness and so on. And I saw a requirement for photocells to control these. Should we then expect these are on-off, or are they variable brightness depending on the conditions? Like, what is just curious what our intent is there?
Yeah, so lighting color will stay consistent. We don't typically that doesn't typically change in a light fixture once it's been installed that way. What can change is dimming of lights. And so that's more of the power and the wattages that get put out from the light. And we have looked at, in particular cases where there is environmentally sensitive areas, looking at dimming those lights during an evening hour, right, 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. or something, or 5 a.m. just to try to reduce that light output. But that's the extent of what we've looked at in terms of kind of having those light levels change.
Okay, thank you. And one other question. I know in the past I've asked about reusing or multi-purposing some of the light poles for level 1, level 2 electric chargers for cars. I know in some places they do that. I know there can be technical challenges, and I know we don't want to get into the business, but in terms of having the infrastructure available to third parties that they could lease and have that, is that something that's supported here, or is the reason why we wouldn't consider that sort of thing in this sort of bylaw?
So Public Works has requested that a lot of those electrical outputs be higher up so that they are not accessible to the public, and that they can be used if we wanted to have decorative lighting or seasonal lighting that gets added to these poles. So we have not looked at having poles be kind of charging receptacles for the public.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hamilton, do these standards around illumination, how do they take into account our rainy climate? So being able to see pedestrians at intersections when it's dark and pouring rain.
Yeah, those are good questions. And all of these, a lot of what we've created in this guideline are kind of not reinventing the wheel. We've basically taken the municipal standards that MMCD already has and actually putting it into a user-friendly document for us. So a lot of these, the crosswalk standards, they haven't changed. There are light levels that are required for crosswalks specifically to ensure safety, and they are higher levels than you would typically find on just a sidewalk. And so those are all researched and well documented, and all the municipalities follow that. What we wanted to do with these guidelines is make them more user-friendly for our staff and make them user-friendly for the lighting professionals that are proposing these things, because we found that those guidelines were not always being met. So now we have a very clear document that says, if you have a crosswalk, this is where the lights need to go. These are the light levels that need to be outputted in to ensure safety.
if we were finding that that wasn't working for our climate, could we update it?
Yes, I don't think we've.
All municipalities where?
So there's the MMCD is a municipal, let me get the exact word, it's the Master Municipal Construction Document, and this is what is referenced by professionals when they do lighting design. It's a standard that has to be met, and we took that crosswalk standard and put it into our guidelines. Our current bylaw said that you had to reference MMCD, so there's been no change in that particular piece. It's just now that we've put it into a document, we can there's more ability for staff to ensure that we are actually meeting that guideline. So I don't think there's been any change, particularly for Squamish, if that's the question that you have, because of our rainy climate.
And then in our own sort of public works budgeting, over time, will we upgrade what exists to this new standard so that there's consistency, or how do we start to then align this, not just with new builds, but what's already out there?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the public works budgets and timelines for this, but I do know that we have worked with Public Works and we have worked with our capital works team as well. And they, now that there is a standard to reference, they will be making sure that we are applying that consistently in all of our projects.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so the recommendation is to give this first 3 readings. Moved by Councillor Reese. Second by Councillor Pettengill. Any comments? Councillor Reese?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I found this presentation very enlightening. Thank you.
Oh, so bad.
I've been waiting for a long time for that one.
Moment. Councillor Pettengill?
Yeah, I don't think I can really follow that up, but I am, I'm glad we're paying this sort of attention to this. And I'm not in a position to say that, there must be this specific thing done at this point to support chargers on these poles. But I would just sort of, as we're working through and forward on our community climate action plan, from my mind, it's not just an option of people plugging in, but just making sure there's enough current or voltage in the lines, maybe that someone else could put in whatever equipment and run third party, just to get more use out of our municipal infrastructure, and just making sure we're keeping open to those options and, for the future, and hope we can keep our minds open on that. And with that, though, I will be supporting this, and thank you for the work on it.
Thank you. Any other hands? All right, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Nice to see you. Okay, under 9C, we have a number of adoptions. So we'll go through these hopefully promptly, one at a time. So first up, 9C1 is District of Squamish Development Cost Charge Bylaw 2020. Sorry. There's a number missing there. Number 2762 2020 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. Any comments? Councillor Anderson?
I take it, and this is a question to staff, that the Inspector of Municipalities has given full approval to the proposed bylaw. It seems it's coming by uneventful, which is good. But all of this is in order then with the Inspector of Municipalities, Mr. Buxton?
Yes, it is.
May I also add a further comment? I think for future, and it may be a few years before we return to the development cost charges bylaw, it's much easier to conduct engagement with the residential development community, that is the housing developers, than it is for the institutional and industrial sector. And I think we might give attention in future to some way to sort of institutionalize or have a mechanism for reaching out to the industrial and institutional stakeholders And one group that may be of assistance here is the Squamish Chamber of Commerce. And this would involve a conversation with them to encourage them to play a role in this. But I do think it's necessary to make sure that our engagement process is really up to where it needs to be relative to the residential. We wouldn't want hard feelings to come out relative to, you know, the rates that may be proposed and a little bit of a difficulty to reach out to those stakeholders. That's just a comment, and we'll revisit the process in a few years, I expect. Thank you.
For clarity, Mr. Buxton, when are we revisiting this?
This year. We get to do it all over again.
Your comments are well taken. Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Any other comments? All right, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have all the loan authorization bylaws. So the first up is the Squamish Landfill Gas Capture and Flare Capital Works Loan Authorization, number 2692, 2020, be adopted. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. The District of Squamish Technology Transformation Project Capital Works Loan Authorization Bylaw number 2774, 2020, be adopted. Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Hertford. Any opposed? Carries. The District of Squamish Peninsula Main Road Phase 2 Capital Works Loan Authorization Bylaw number 2775, 2020, be adopted. I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Brace. Any comments? I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. District of Squamish Water Meter Capital Works Loan Authorization Bylaw number 2776, 2020, be adopted. Moved by Councillor Pengo, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. District of Squamish Main Fire Hall Valley Cliff Capital Works Loan Authorization Bylaw number 2777, 2020, be adopted. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. So we're on to item 10, staff reports. Under corporate services, we are going to cancel the April regular business meetings and make them into special meetings during the state of emergency. For someone that will move that. By Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Motion carries. 10B, under emergency services, the Community Resiliency Investment Program Economic Recovery Grant 2021. See, Ms. Latimer has joined us.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Just do a quick sound check that you can hear me.
We can, thank you.
Excellent. So good evening. I'm Megan Latimer, the Emergency Program Coordinator with the Squamish Emergency Program, and I'm joined as well by Fire Chief Bill Stoner. And staff are here tonight to seek approval from Council to submit an application to UBCM for a Community Resiliency Investment Program grant under the new economic recovery stream, and to outline the proposed use of those funds. So you'll remember that in 2018, we completed our community wildfire protection plan, which included 48 recommendations for how to make Squamish safer in the event of a wildfire and how to mitigate against wildfire. And in 2019, the province instituted the Community Resiliency Investment Program suite of funding. And this program is really aimed at reducing the risk and impact of wildfire to communities. So the District of Squamish has been very successful in applying for grants from this program. We now administer a fairly robust amount of funding under the Community Resiliency Investment Program of about $381,000 in grants. And that's from 2019 to 2021. We just secured our most recent one under this program. And this is a new funding stream that was just announced in February. It's still under this program, but is extra money that's been put forward as part of the COVID economic recovery funding through the provincial government. So this new grant will also be for $150,000 maximum, and staff intend to apply for the maximum amount under the grant. This will allow the DOS to bring forward 2022 programming that was already planned under the Community Resiliency Investment Program and under our Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and bring that forward into 2021. There's two main areas that we're focusing, that we're planning to focus activities under this grant. The first is around a demonstration fuel management treatment for part of the Brackendale Farmers Institute. The demonstration fuel management treatment will encompass the northern borders of the Brackendale Farmers Institute Park. And a fuel management prescription was already completed for the entirety of the Brackendale Farmers Institute earlier in the year. And this is really part of a larger Squamish prescription project for areas that were identified in our Community Wildfire Protection Plan. So the demonstration treatment is intended to target a trail buffer on the northern and eastern edges of the park, near some of the homes on Ross Road and Brackendale Elementary School. This park is, as you know, heavily used by the public and will provide an excellent opportunity to display information, signage about fuel treatments in general, and also fire smart education in this area that we can then use to build on for future fuel management and fire smart activities going forward. The other area that we are targeting, intend to target activities under this funding stream is for fire smarting, doing fire smart vegetation management of critical infrastructure around the District of Squamish. So there are a number of different critical infrastructure sites, both that are owned by the district and by partners, that would be critical in the event of a wildfire. And these were recently assessed by one of our registered professional foresters that we work with in early March. And 9 sites were identified around the district where vegetation management would improve the resiliency of these structures to wildfire. So the sites that have been identified are the 4 District of Squamish reservoirs and water stations, the Powerhouse Springs well site, 2 District of Squamish emergency communication towers, the site of the new Squamish Fire Hall #1 in Ballycliffe, and the Squamish Hospital. And so this part of the project would involve the removal, thinning, and pruning of trees in priority zones around that critical infrastructure, and removal of that vegetation. And we're hoping that with this work, we'll be able to attract local crews to actually undertake the work and to build capacity for vegetation management here in Squamish, as we have a series of other operational fuel management treatments planned for the coming years, and there will be continued maintenance that's required as well, all of which we hope will be covered under the Community Resiliency Investment Program funding. So with that, staff's recommendation is that council approves for us to submit an application to UBCM for the Community Resiliency Investments new Economic Recovery Stream Grant. And I will hand it over for any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I'm looking at the engagement section in the staff report, where it discusses the communication plan to be developed and neighboring properties, First Nations, and provincial government to be consulted. My question is whether there are two entities that might be on that list and may already be on your list. And one is the Smoke Bluffs Park Staff Advisory Committee, because I believe at least one of your installations is within the Smoke Bluffs Park, a reservoir as well as a tower. I'm not sure which towers you might have identified. So that just to be sure, because I think they could give some feedback and learn from the exercise as well. It is an area close to me, and I've lived through 3 major fires in that area. My second question is whether some of these installations may be in the community forest boundaries, or within the community forest boundaries. The Debeck's Hill is a communications tower, as well as the well site. So that I guess my question really is whether those two organizations or representatives of them could be a part of your communications plan. Community Forest Manager and the Smokeless Park Advisory Committee.
Through the chair. Yes, those are both excellent recommendations. I believe they are included in our list for engagement if the project, if we should be successful in receiving the grant this year, and we'll be reaching out to them as part of that engagement. So I will double check to make sure that they are on that list because those are really great recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any witty puns, Councilor Rice? Do you want for this one? No? All right. Does someone want to move the motion that we apply to UBCM for $150,000 from the Economic Recovery Stream? Moved by Councilor Anderson, second by Councilor Herford. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Let's hope we're successful. Thanks for joining us tonight. Council, we're moving on to item 11, our consent agenda. If there's an item on this agenda that presents a conflict of interest for you, or something, whether it's minutes or a letter that you would like to pull, now is your time to do it. Council Pettingill?
I wanted to pull letter 4, please.
Any others? Seeing none, is there someone who can move the consent agenda? Moved by Councilor Stoner, second by Councilor Race. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll deal with your item, Councilor Pettingill, as 13A6. No, 5, sorry. All right, so under item 13, action requested, correspondence received regarding the Squamish bit. There were a number of letters here that they be received and referred to the Director of Engineering. Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Pettingill. Any comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a letter about dog parks, and recommendation is this be referred to the General Manager of Community Services for follow-up and response. On with that, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Stoner. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Kay Jameson contacted us about the large incoming population and that this be referred to community planning for follow-up and response. Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor French. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then R. McCartan about marine salvage, that this piece of correspondence be referred to staff to advise. Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Anderson. Any opposed? Motion carries. Councilor Pettingill, you pulled your letter 4.
Yes, thank you. And this is about Human Trafficking Awareness Day. I just wanted to pull this for 2 reasons. One, to flag that, you know, with unfortunate, I think, economic fallout from COVID, and if we start to see a lot of work camps, I think some of these issues may become bigger issues than we might like. And so I just want to flag for the future, if we start seeing TUP permits for work camps and so on, this is the sort of presentation I would appreciate to inform some of those thoughts. The other thing, there was a request in here from this author to present to council. So I was going to move that this be referred to staff for them to send our application to appear form to the letter writer.
And inform you that that has been done. Staff
okay.
And she has submitted a request to appear and has been granted 5 minutes at a committee hall.
Okay, so I will just move receipt then.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Stoner. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have recommendations from committee of the whole from March 9 that council receive the oceanfront amendments report and provide feedback on the items noted in the staff report at committee of the whole held on March 9th. Moved by Councilor Race, seconded by Councillor Stoner. Any comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. That the District of Squamish received the Open Data Policy Project with further consideration to IDEA principles, meaning our program around inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, disaggregation of data, and climate change as presented on March 9th, 2020. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any comments? Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, the Arts Council letter of support. Moved by Councillor Rice, seconded by Councillor Herford. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we don't have any items under 16, 17, 18. Is there anyone online for open question period? There is not. Any council or staff announcements? Councillor Anderson.
Yes, this Thursday evening at 7 p.m., Diana Gunstone, who is affiliated with both the Squamish Volunteer Society and the Lower Mainland United Way, is hosting an online panel and discussion, Zoom style if you'd like, about community building, asset-based community development, and placemaking. One of the panelists will be Doug Hackett from the Squamish Community Foundation. And Mr. Hackett will speak about the Foundation's Neighborhood Small Grant Program. So in case anyone is interested to learn more, you can consult the Eventbrite website, and the name of the event is Squamish Local Love, Building Community, this Thursday, 7 p.m. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Any other announcements? Not seeing any. Then there's only one thing to do, and that is to terminate this meeting. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Herford. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. All right, thanks everyone. Thank you staff who supported us tonight.